Aloha, namaste. This is Radha Home, and I'm here with our new moon forecast for this coming Wednesday. It's going to be the 23rd of November, and it is at 12:57 p.m. Hawaii time, which is 2:57 p.m. in Pacific time. So this new moon is happening in sidereal Scorpio, and it is happening right past the point of debilitation of the moon in a star called Anuradha. The moon is debilitated in Scorpio because this is where we're on that roller coaster ride of emotions, where we're unable to control this wave of emotions that are coming at us and through us, and where we have that really fiery quality where we lash out first, as opposed to being able to sit with our emotional state in Pisces and Cancer, the other water signs. In this particular part of Scorpio, Anuradha, we're in the middle of the sign, we're in the middle of the constellation. And the point of debility is actually in the first 3 degrees when we're in the star of Vishaka. So this star is after Radha, that's what Anuradha means. And it's represented by a lotus flower. If we think of the lotus flowers growing up out of the murk, out of the mud, and towards the sun, we can see how this is us, right? We're mired in our emotions, particularly in that beginning part of Scorpio, and we're able to move our attention towards something higher than ourselves, something that connects us to source. And as a result, we're able to grow into this beautiful flower, and this flower of love and devotion that is Radha. The reason that we have this part of Scorpio that is the way it is, or maybe the reason isn't the best way to put it, but how this flow works is that the house right before Scorpio is Libra. And in Libra, we're compromising, right? We're making agreements with people. We're trying to harmonize. We're trying to connect. And often we fold on our own values or our own principles or our own ideals in order to make things friendly, in order to get along and have nice feelings and friendliness and love and happiness and enjoyment and pleasure. When we move into the Scorpio part of the sky, we maybe have achieved relationship, right? Maybe we've actually created some kind of harmony with another human. And then we have to face the drama and the trauma of, like, we could lose this person now. You know, this person could literally die. They could probably more likely leave us or not like us once they see our shadows. And we get into this realm where what is very hard to know. It's the realm of fear. It's the natural 8th house, but it's not necessarily the same kind of fear as the fear in the realm of Saturn, where everything is like these practical fears, you know, like you're going to die. Well, you are going to die, you know, and this other person could die also. But the likelihood that that's why they're going to leave you is not high unless you've lived a very full life with the person, right? Most of us in relationship, that's not our primary concern. There's a higher likelihood that they're going to leave, or you're going to leave them, or you're going to have a traumatic fight of some sort that's going to sever the bonds and sever the feelings of love and harmony that you've worked so hard to achieve. So we end up creating for ourselves these situations, and a lot of them are projections of our own past, of our own demons, our own, you know, ghosts or shadows. And we see something like say a scorpion, which is not that big, and we see it as this massive dragon, this thing that's going to just eat us alive if we don't deal with it, right? We've all seen this happen, not just in our romantic relationships, but in any relationship. You know, we really see this happen a lot on the internet, actually, when we're in this world where there's not a lot of care or consideration because we're not having this one-to-one conversation. So people say something and maybe they just say something short and there's context behind it for them, but the context for you is different. And what ends up happening is people get really triggered, right? People get really like, oh my God, this person's saying the thing that I can't hear, you know, the one word I can't hear, or the one sentiment that I can't handle hearing. And then we go off on that person, or somebody goes off on that person, or somehow a fight ensues. And there isn't the context of, one-to-one, like I'm sitting here and I want to get along with you, so we end up in a situation where things get really, really hairy, really quick, right? They get really, things can go south quickly. And of course, this happens in our in-person relationships too, when we misunderstand something and we hear something the wrong way and we're like, oh, that's what that person meant. Well, in this time, it's really possible to happen. I'm actually going to share my screen right now, so we can see the lineup here in sidereal Scorpio. We have all the planets in Anuradha, which I started to talk about, but I'll talk about a little bit more in a minute. But Venus and Mercury being here is definitely also problematic. The moon wants to connect in this way that's unconditional. The moon wants to feel. The moon is where we are the most vulnerable. And when we're connecting intimately with people, we're using our moon energy. It's our mind, it's our emotions, it's our psyche. And it's the part of us that's feeling, met by another person. Venus and Mercury are the relational planets. Venus is where we want to feel good. Venus is where we want to be in a relationship. It's where we want to be happy. It's where we want pleasure. It's where we want things to be nice. It's where we want things to be beautiful. Mercury is the communication, which is a lot of how we get those Venus things, right? It's really hard to be in a relationship if you're not talking. And often when we have relationships that maybe are more sexual in nature, more physical, or your relationship is with somebody primarily through a medium like dance or something, and you're not communicating, it can go really well, right? I mean, that part works out because the two bodies don't have any complaints and they learn how to work in unison with each other. It's the words and the communication that cause problems in our relationships. We have a need to be understood. And in Scorpio, again, we have this problem where we feel like we're not understood. Like this person's definitely not understanding me. And, these planets are very close to the sun. The sun is at 7 degrees, Venus at 15 degrees. So this is 8 degrees, like an 8-degree difference. Sorry, math is not my forte. And this is like a 9-degree difference. So these planets are combust to the sun. And that means that they're really close. And the rays of the sun, the fire, the heat of the sun is getting to them. The sun is our power source and it is hot, right? And the closer we are to it, the more we feel that heat. And when these planetary energies that affect us in these different ways are really close to the sun, we feel that energy being like devoured by the rays of the sun. And our fuse is shorter. We can handle less not feel good energy with Venus, less disharmony before we feel like, this person's trying to hurt me. Right. And I should sting them first because this is the realm of Scorpio. Like I see this dragon and I want to slay it before it can get to me. I see a bug and I want to kill it before it can sting me. Even if it's minding its own business and really has no intention of stinging and it's just doing its own thing, that's our delusions and our own mind and our own trauma and our own patterns that come forward that we think we're catching something before it's actually happening. And then with Mercury, it can feel like we're not being heard. We're not being listened to. They're not hearing us. And maybe their communication means something different than we think it does. Maybe they're really saying this when they say that, maybe they said, do you want to bring a sweater? And we're like taking it as to mean this whole other thing about being cold and, this whole other story we have in our head. And we don't just speak what we feel or what we're thinking or what's coming up for us because we have so much fear around it. And so this is a really like danger zone, these planets piling up in Scorpio. It can really be challenging. And of course, for many people, you feel like you've already passed through the Scorpio gate. And while it was really intense because we had an eclipse and you can see the South Node is still here in Libra, we're in many ways, having to go through past patterns with our relating skills. And this is really highlighted here because Venus and Mars are in each other's signs. So Mars is the ruler of Scorpio and it's retrograde, which is backwards, right? We're going back in time to all the ways in which we felt like in Taurus that other people have kept us from our discipline, from our strength, from our ability to individuate and be our best selves. Our strength and our courage is being limited by other people. And we're going back through our experience in order to, find out really that that's not true. That's the enlightened version of what could happen. The less enlightened version of what can happen is we go back and point the finger, right? And see all the ways we have been kept from what our need for our own self really was. Because of pleasure, because of comfort, because of luxuries, because of things we wanted in order to feel good in the moment, which is what Taurus is about, we chose to backfire on our own discipline. Whether that's getting up and doing your yoga practice in the morning, whether that's dietary discipline, choosing to eat healthy food, whether that's standing up for yourself and standing in a place of courage and not agreeing to do things that don't work for you, whatever the different ways are that you personally fold on your own self in an effort to be comfortable or feel good in the moment. That's what's coming up right now. And the exchange of signs with Venus really highlights it for us, where it's like, oh yeah, that's what's happening. So there's a lot of wisdom running, even though Mars doesn't really particularly do that well in Taurus. The retrograde action, the fact that he's going back through it, the fact that there's a 7-month total period where we're reckoning with this energy is requiring us to really look at it in a slow way and really see the ways in which we blame others. And then Venus being in his sign, in Mars's sign of Scorpio, helps this intelligence level of the planets. When the planets are in each other's signs, they give each other some of their intelligence. Venus gives some of the capacity to compromise, some of the capacity to want things to feel good. Mars gives some of that quality of courage and strength and discipline that we so badly need when we're in the face of our laziness, which is really what it is. We're really not folding on our discipline because it's actually helping anyone else. Because if we did understand on a higher level, we would know that taking care of ourselves first is taking care of someone else. If we get up and do I have a child. If I get up and do my yoga practice before he wakes up, we have our whole day in a better start than if I'm trying to do it while also making him breakfast and doing this. Then it's frustrating. And of course it's not his fault because he's a child, right? It can't be his fault. But if this is a partner that you feel like is holding you back from it, well, it's a lot easier to blame it on them than it is on a kid. So this is one of the big lessons we're learning right now. How the things that are wrong in our relationships are our own fault. And it's not in a sense that we need to be beating ourselves up about it or even, judging ourselves beyond just recognizing that truth. But it is necessary for us to recognize the patterns that we fall prey to and to make choices that will shift that, so that we're not falling in that situation. And the shift needs to be in actually disciplining ourselves, showing up in action for ourselves first. B, it needs to be in noticing the power, the feelings that we have, that other people have power over us, and the feelings we have about our communication and our actual capacity to be happy, and feeling like there's any sort of source of power that reigns supreme over ourselves in that regard. And then the shadows, the emotions that come up, feeling them, allowing ourselves to feel them and feeling them fully. One of the beautiful things about Scorpio, particularly the sun in Scorpio, is there's a real compassion. There's a real empathy available because of the trauma and drama that we go through in this place in the sky. We have a lot of empathy and compassion for others. We know how hard it is. We're doing the courage, we're doing the work, particularly when you see planets like Mars, Jupiter, and the sun in Scorpio. We see people who are like emotional warriors. They're really showing up to look at their shadows. They're really allowing themselves to find strength through their pain. And this can be such a gift to other people because other people, might not have the same light on it. They might just be roiling in it. But when we see planets like the moon, Venus, and Mercury in here are more connected planets, this is when we really struggle. This is when we have a hard time. And the moon is also moving to dark, right? This is the new moon. So we're less engaged in the world anyway. We're more in the state that operates better in a meditative solo state. The closer we get to the new moon, the less we really should be out and about, the more we really should be internalizing our energy and allowing ourselves to release things that don't serve us. The female, biology is such that often women bleed with the new moon. It's a time of shedding. It's a time of going inward. And women who are on that cycle will really feel that quality of wanting to stay home and self-nurture and not wanting to be out and about quite as much. So these different things coming together, right? The relational planets of Venus and Mercury, the moon waning to dark and being right past the point of debilitation is really going to cause us to see if the work that we did during the eclipse on relationships and what we think that we learned through that portal, if it's really true. Like on our feet practice, okay, we had a mental experience and we really did a good diplomatic job there. Maybe we did, maybe we didn't, but many of us passed through that portal and found some light in that regard. And then now it's like, okay, well, let's test that. Let's see if that's true. Let's see if that really works. And we do have, a kind of beautiful drishti from Jupiter here. So we have the Mars drishti, which is the energetic gaze that's 2 ways across the way. And then we have a 1-way energetic gaze from Jupiter, 9 houses, 9th house drishti, which is like one of wisdom, one of dharma and truth offered to these 4 planets here in Scorpio. And so there's an opportunity for the wisdom, and it's retrograde also. This Jupiter's retrograde, so both the drishtis are retrograde, which really has more to do with like internal energy, definitely past things, but also just internalizing the energy, so not manifesting on the outside as much. So this isn't necessarily a teacher coming and telling you something. This is more like your own self-realization about something. And since Jupiter's been retrograde for quite some time now, it's like an internal realization that you've been sitting with, that's reflecting upon like the teachings building up, and it's reflecting upon all this emotional turmoil. And perhaps you can have an aha moment with that. The star of Anuradha is based on Radha, who is the lover of Krishna. She is the one that we pray to when we want to have devotion. We don't pray directly to Krishna for devotion. We pray to Radha to have her level of devotion. And in the Puranic texts, there's a story where Krishna is very ill, right? He falls sick and he has something that no doctor can cure. And at this point, they've been separated. Radha and Krishna met in Vrindavan when they were children. And she was one of many gopis, many of the milkmaids that he had relations with. Of course, Krishna is like this avatar of Vishnu. And so he's come down to give love to everyone, but he has particular love for Radha. And then they have to part ways. She is a gopi and she's going to marry, a cowherd, and he is going to go and become the prince in Dwarka in the palace. And he has duties, and he takes on many wives and has a calling, which is to defeat certain inimical forces in the world, which is why he came to Earth to begin with. But at this one point, he falls ill, and all the doctors in all the land are trying to figure out what's wrong with him. And one doctor finally figures out that he needs somebody to take a dollop of dirt off the ground and place it on his third eye point. And no one will do this, right? Everybody from his, the people working in the palace, to his devotees, to his family, to all of his wives. Everyone's like, no way am I going to do that, because this is like a sin. To take dirt off the ground and put it on somebody above you is a sin. You can't do that. If so, you'll be put back on the wheel of karma. All the work you've done through the lives to heal your karma will be for naught, and you'll be thrown back on the wheel to the beginning. This is the story that is told to these devotees, to these people. This is the truth of their understanding of their own spiritual practice. So no one wants to do this. No one's willing to do it. Well, word gets to Radha back in Vrindavan that Krishna's sick. Well, she doesn't think at all. She just finds a way to get to the palace, and she gets to the palace and she, you know, walks in, and it's big and she doesn't know what to do. And she finds the room where everybody's standing outside fretting over what to do for Krishna, because the one thing that will heal him is the one thing no one's willing to do, right? No one's willing to risk their place on the wheel of time. No one's willing to risk all the work they've already put in to establishing their own good karma in order to save even the emanation of God himself that they all worship. Well, Radha walks in and the doctor tells her the same thing he's told everyone else. What we need is, dollop of dirt off the ground placed on his third eye point. And she doesn't think at all. She just does it. And immediately becomes realized. She becomes the goddess. She becomes the other half of him and is totally transported off the wheel of karma. All of her samskaras removed. Because she wasn't coming from this sort of orthodoxy or this dogma or this story of this is the way it's supposed to be. She was coming from truth in her heart and her love and devotion. And that is why she's the ultimate depiction of devotion. And the reason Anuradha comes, or again, that word, the reason, but that Anuradha comes after this place of debility of the moon is like pulling ourselves up out of our emotional turmoil. We have all this chaos. We feel so much the I story. I'm suffering because of the other. I'm suffering because my needs aren't being met. All the turmoil, all the drama, all the trauma that we come up with. And then if we can fix our gaze, if we can fix our focus on something outside of ourselves that we can be fully devoted to, all the drama and trauma goes away. All the things that we thought were so desperate go away. And anyone who's ever been in a really traumatic situation knows that, right? Whatever story you had going on, maybe you're having a fight with somebody a few minutes before, all of a sudden the earth starts to shake or a fire starts to rage or whatever the thing is that happens. And it's like, oh, you're kind of over the fight, right? Now it's focused on survival. Now you're focused on this thing. And if you've ever had someone pass after having a fight with them and you haven't been able to make amends, you know how horrible that feels, that you left it on that page, that you cared so much about that thing. And now that person's not there anymore to be able to, care more about them than whatever story you had in your head. So this is the gift of Anuradha, the gift in the middle of Scorpio, to just put the focus outside of ourselves. We become so, self-involved and so wrapped up in our emotions that we forget there's like this whole world outside of us. And if we could serve that, we'd have a lot less internal drama, right? We'd feel a lot less internal drama. So whether that's the divine, or whether that's your partner, or whether that's your children, or whether that's your hobby or the thing you love to do more than anything in this world, or whether that's as simple as being devoted to your own breath and just sitting with your breath, sitting with the feelings as they come up for you, as you experience them, and being devoted to the experience of just being, as opposed to making it mean something in context to other people. This is a really beautiful opportunity to tap into that and to find your devotion and to find that part of you that can step out of yourself and can grow towards the light and lose some of the drama. Because it is really, truly all in our head in so many ways. So much of what we experience is all in our head. Or even if it's manifesting in the outside world, it's our own story that keeps manifesting it. The story we're telling ourselves that makes those our only options. These are our choices. These are all our choices. And we live in a world that really encourages that, right? It's all around us. So each person that heals this really helps the collective as well. So I hope this is helpful for your new moon. And we are moving into it right before Thanksgiving here in the US. So for those of you, who live on American soil or live on maybe, I guess most of American soil is not actually American soil. The holiday of Thanksgiving is pretty much right after this new moon, right? This is Wednesday, the 23rd, and then the 24th is Thanksgiving. And the moon will still be in Scorpio. It'll be right after this new moon. It will be the new phase, so it'll be a waxing moon, the first phase of the waxing moon, which can have a more optimistic vibe to it, for sure, but it's still close to the dark. So there can be a lot of depression. There can be a lot of sadness. There can be a lot of fighting. You know, if your company is not, well, if the company you're keeping has a lot of interwoven drama and stories with one another, that can really come up. It's a beautiful time to serve others. And it's a beautiful time to really self-reflect, you know, even if you do go to a gathering, which most of us probably will, to really sit in that space with yourself as each thing comes up, instead of getting involved in the story, you know, sit with it each step of the way. And it's also a good time to really reflect on your own self-discipline around, you know, maybe what you eat or how you approach food. And to do something physical, you know, play a game instead of watching. I mean, I'm sure not too many people maybe who are watching this also watch football, but if you do, fine, but maybe play some, maybe play a game instead of just watching it and sitting around and really being in this sort of mindless place, particularly around things that are hot button issues in your world. So I hope this is helpful, and blessings on your new moon in Anuradha. Namaste.